Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I am Suzanne Sherman. I will be your host for the next hour here on the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. This is also the place where the progressive mainstream media propaganda goes to die. We slay a lot of sacred cows. We will dispel the myths, and we are trying to get people to think in a manner that they're trying to convince you otherwise. They're going to try and get you to buy into every notion that solutions are coming out of Washington, D.C. Our co-host and my producer here, Jeff Johnson, the owner of the network, has a show called The Paradigm Shift that's premised on that very principle. We're going to get him back. He'll be on the air with me momentarily. He likes to get everything set up when we start the show. I want to remind you, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a CRN fan page as well. Join our discussion. And I have a page, Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report Radio Show. I put a bunch of links up there this morning that I will be getting to on tomorrow's show. And we have a Radio Co link on our page. You can click that. We have content 24/7. There's always something good on there. We have some past episodes of the Mark and Suzanne Show, Revolutionizing Radio. I spoke with Mark yesterday. He's had a lot of stuff, had some projects going on in the background. We will be getting him back. We're going to be getting on the radio together again soon. And boy, do we have a lot to get you caught up to speed on. We have a YouTube channel. We also have a SoundCloud channel. Please subscribe, follow, and share. We are not getting responses. The Facebook algorithm, the tech wizards are not our friends. They do not like what we have to say. If you want us to keep going, if we're going to grow, we need our followers, our listeners to share, comment, talk about our show. This has got to be an organic movement. And, we can't do it without you. I really want to thank those that are supporting us and doing this and helping us grow. Your efforts are noted and very much appreciated. Other shows I have Case in Point, where I discuss certain Supreme Court landmark decisions and compare and contrast them to how they actually conform to the Constitution as ratified. And the next case up is going to be Fletcher v. Peck. Now, if you haven't gone to law school, you might not be aware of the significance of that case, but my good friend and historian Dave Benner, who is also the author of the 14th Amendment and the Incorporation Doctrine, as well as the book The Compact of the Republic, will be joining me. So you're going to get the perspective from a lawyer and a historian about one of the cases that very early on set us on the path that we are on right now, where these states, in direct contravention to the intent of the Constitution and our constitutional federal republic, has been systematically dismantled and inverted to one national united state of America, as opposed to these United States. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a great show. We also have recordings of my articles, some from the 10th Amendment Center. I think we're going to do the one from the Abbeville Institute next, and we call those Fundamentals of Federalism. So you can check those out. Greg Carpenter also has Liberty. What do we call those, Jeff? Minutes of Liberty? Liberty Minutes?
Liberty Minutes.
Liberty Minutes, and he also debuted his show, The Spy Who Loves Liberty, last week. So there is some great content. Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment Center has some of his podcasts up there. By the way, I did a show with him for Shift Gold, where we talked about preparedness, and I believe we have that in our Radio Co lineup as well. And I did a show a week ago on Ready Men. Ready Man Media is out here in Salt Lake City. They share the same business entity as Black Rifle Coffee, and these are a group of hardcore preppers, and they know their stuff. So I did a recording of a survival incident that I experienced. And Jeff, when we were talking before we went on the air, you were mentioning a post on there that they criticized, I guess the commenter criticized that most of the people that are preparing have never actually survived or had to go through a survival experience. Well, I am somebody that has, and I shared my advice on that show and my experience, how I got through it, and how important, even if you're not trained, that you have that survival mindset. I didn't know I had it until I actually had to use it. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback. Somebody said that it was the right message at the right time and really helped his wife dealing with anxiety. Also, I just posted recently, there's a show called The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley, and it was a follow-up to an interview he did. I believe it was their episode 44 with our friend also from the 10th Amendment Center, Clay Davis, where they were talking about nullification and marijuana, federal marijuana laws. And I rattled his cage. I said, hey, I want to follow up because I wrote an article with regards to Prop 2, which they were also discussing. And this applies to all of the states that have legalized marijuana in one form or another, how the states actually have to step up and not only go beyond not using state resources to assist in federal intervention of or interruption of the people in the states of their rights, like we discussed in the Raich case in California. They actually have to interpose. They have to step up and protect their states. So that was a really good show. We had The Gold Standard. It was episode 45. I encourage you to listen to that. Jeff, I want to thank you for being here with me today. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Again, ice caused a tree down, took down electric lines last night. So we were without power for about 6 hours. So during the night, I was up messing with the generators, make sure we had electric over here at my house and then up the road at my mom's. So it was a eventful night.
You know, I was thinking of the power lines over here because we had a big storm and a lot of snow here. And I was looking at the power lines around my property and they were absolutely covered with snow and ice. And, you know, notwithstanding the danger if a live wire comes down, other than that, I was set. I've got the generator. We're stocked up here. And again, we've had a lot of snow and you just never know. We had some power outages that were also intermittent, but like you, I have the generator up and ready to go. And it's really important for people to be prepared for this stuff. And in fact, we're going to be talking a little bit about personal security a little bit later on in the show when I discuss the issue of these boys that were at the Lincoln Memorial. But before we get into that, this has kind of had me down, Jeff. And this is the new law that went into effect in New York with abortion. And I always say, you know, what happens in one state is really none of my concern. This is the business of each state. But my exception to that is when it comes to the murder of the unborn. And what's particularly disheartening is the celebration that has been ensuing since New York has made it legal to murder a baby up until the day it's supposed to be born. And maybe this, I try to keep my personal feelings out of these stories and my life experiences, but you know, we're all human and we can't help but let them affect how we perceive these events. But my younger son was born at 35 weeks. And I will tell you, there's this thing called APGAR scores, if you're not familiar with them, and they reflect at the time of birth the baby's responsiveness, his color, can they breathe, that sort of thing. And mine was 9 and 9. He was literally able to hold his head up. He was pouting because we'd had a medical emergency and his blood sugar was very low. So that lower lip was sticking out because he was hungry. And I was still out under general anesthesia, and they handed him to his dad, my husband at the time. And when he went to put a bottle to feed him, to give him some sucrose in his blood, this brand new baby born at 35 weeks, grabbed that bottle with both hands and shoved it in his mouth. So this is a baby that not only we know can perceive pain, but can also sense hunger, know what to do, and how to feed himself. This is a baby that could be eviscerated and pulled out limb by limb and his skull crushed. One World Trade Center is lit up in pink to celebrate this abomination. I really, really struggle with this. I said the light should be blood red. I mean, because that's what this really is about. And this is called, and again, this is they take these draconian laws and call them something nice, and people go for it. It's the Reproductive Health Act, New York's latest abortion law. This is an article out of Breitbart. Allows termination of a pregnancy, again, another euphemism, until the expected day of birth with certain limitations. Thank God for that, right, Jeff? They have certain limitations. An abortion may be performed by a licensed, certified, or authorized practitioner within 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, or if there is an absence of fetal viability, or at any time when necessary to protect the parent's life or health. Well, what do you mean?
Suzanne,
Yeah.
can I just interrupt there? Read that sentence again, and I'm going to stop you.
The one that I just quoted?
Yep.
An abortion may be performed by a licensed, certified, or authorized practitioner.
Authorized practitioner.
Yeah.
That doesn't even mean a doctor.
Right.
It's someone that's certified. They can send someone to some school to be certified. It's not a doctor. It's not necessarily even a nurse. It is a certified practitioner. Does oh, good grief.
I was reading today 1 in 3 pregnancies in New York ends up in the baby being aborted. And again, that jumped out at me too. An authorized practitioner. That's like an esthetician. You know, you can just go to school for this. You can learn how to cut hair, eviscerate babies. Maybe they'll even incorporate that in some of these places. I told you about the California Planned Parenthood shares a common wall with a nail spa. So maybe you can go and learn how to do both in one school. Breitbart also reported the Reproductive Health Act also redefines person as a human being who has been born and is alive, eliminating the possibility of recognizing the personhood of the unborn child. During her presidential campaign in 2016, Hillary Clinton stated that the unborn person doesn't have constitutional rights. Do we need yet one other reason to stop using the phrase constitutional rights? I have said time and time again, the rights that they call constitutional rights in that context are limitations upon the general government. What we see here, and I refer to the Heller case all the time, and the First Amendment cases as well, where the justices say our little black robe messiahs will come out and pontificate and wax eloquent and say rights are subject to reasonable regulation. Rights are not without limitations. Well, this is what happens. So this isn't just about shouting wolf in a crowded theater, according to that nutcase, Nancy Pelosi, or about what kind of gun you're allowed to have. This is about defining what is a human being. And the definition of a human being lies completely within the desire of the parent. The mother whose body in which it is gestating can determine whether or not it lives or dies up till the moment of birth. Do we see the harm that this can cause? Harsh breakups. You know what? I know this baby's due next week. You broke up with me. I'm just going to kill this baby. Tell me that won't happen. Tell me how at 35, at 40 weeks, a mother's health is in danger. Health can be defined, as we know, the way they define all this stuff, as mere convenience. By the way, my health was in danger at 35 weeks. I had a condition called a placental abruption. My room looked like a crime scene. We almost bled to death. Guess what? There's this thing called a cesarean section delivery where they saved our lives. If you want to save lives, there's a way to do it. This isn't about saving lives. And these are the same people, by the way, who will use the life of children to take guns away. If we could just save one life. But now they've lit up World Trade Center in pink lights to celebrate the fact that it is now legal to murder a viable baby, which I've seen at 5 weeks before due date, has clear cognitive abilities. My son was able to recognize me before we left the hospital. He was looking for me. He was looking for me at birth. When I woke up from anesthesia, I saw him lying a few feet away, rooting as babies do, looking for their mother. But it would be okay with the people of New York to have a practitioner reach in there with all the equipment they use and eviscerate him and pull him out limb by limb.
Now, Suzanne,
Yeah.
I just want to jump in here. And I just want to make sure all the listeners understand. By making this argument, we're not arguing that we want a one national response to this, because that's not what we want. The fact of the matter is, this is federalism. And I say it all the time. New York sucks. It really does. And that's okay. That's their right. They can suck. They will, they're murdering babies. And we have other stories involved in this, we're going to get to about other states and how other states are doing this. So, I just want to make sure that our listeners realize we're not calling for SCOTUS to rule that this is unconstitutional, quote unquote.
Absolutely. And when we've discussed abortion, particularly when we had Dan Fisher, who was running for governor of Oklahoma on an abolitionist platform, we've always said we're not calling for abolition in every state. This is his state. He is seeking to be elected governor for this mission. My exception for when I try to say this is another state's business, not mine, again, is when it comes to the murder of human babies. That does not mean, as you said, we are calling for a national solution. This is a morality. This is a human decency issue. And even though the people of Utah have no right whatsoever to influence their decisions, we certainly have a right, an obligation, a duty to speak out against it. Because if we do not, that will soon become the law of the land in every state, particularly now, because, I just want to address the statement also Hillary Clinton made when she was, again, these softball pitches that she was getting on her campaign were just nauseating. Do you believe a baby has constitutional rights up until it is born? And rather than saying, yes, I believe babies should be cut to pieces and pulled out limb by limb up till they are born, she just smiles and says, well, I believe in Roe versus Wade. And everybody cheered, and then they just moved on, and saying that, again, babies have no constitutional rights, hide behind Roe versus Wade, which that audience, her little echo chamber, is all going to support, and they get away with that. Again, this was never, ever intended to be a national issue for the general government to regulate it all. But now they've gone beyond that, and they fund it. Not only do they fund that, but the Democrat Party gets their money back because Planned Parenthood goes back and donates money to them. So this system is just dysfunctional and flawed. We have some laws in Utah also that are coming up. This one it was hailed as heroic. They said it's Utah's a heroic law that it's going to ban abortions up to I think it was after 15 weeks. I'm trying to find that. I'm going to open another window and find that. I might have closed that. Hang on, Jeff. But we were talking about that as on K Talk the other day. Jeff, do you have that link handy? I'm looking for it here.
I don't believe I do. I have everything closed down.
I have it here.
Okay.
So sorry about that. This is out of the Deseret News. And it's called Utah Lawmaker Proposes One of the Nation's Strictest Abortion Laws. And again, this is what federalism is all about. So Utah lawmaker here is proposing what would be one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. Again, to me, and I was actually asked this on K Talk the other day, and my response was not favorable. I said, let me say what the law is first. Representative Cheryl Acton, representative out of West Jordan, has filed a bill to ban abortions in the states after 15 weeks of gestation, with some exceptions, of course. She decided to run the bill after learning about all the problems with second trimester abortions for women and the unborn child. Well, yeah, if we remove that elective abortion time frame, then we can avoid so many of the risks that are physical, psychological, and emotional that women experience after a second trimester abortion. The bill is called HB 136 and would allow, again, exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, and fatal fetal defects. Now, when we had Dan Fisher on here, and I've discussed this with Mark Kreslins all the time, you know, we see the inconsistency of the arguments here when we talk about, again, birthright citizenship. Well, we don't want to deport kids and make them pay for the acts of their parents and punish them. Well, what are you doing here? You're murdering a baby because the father committed an act of rape. What the woman needs is compassion and care. The baby doesn't deserve the death sentence. Incest, same thing. Life of the mother. When is the mother's life really ever in danger to the point where it's worthy of making this legal in the first place? Fatal defects. We've talked about that before. You have 2 patients. You don't just have one. They mentioned Mississippi last year passed a 15-week abortion law, exceptions for medical emergency or severe fetal abnormality. Let me talk a little bit about fetal abnormality. I shared this story before. When I was in Los Altos visiting my parents in California a couple years ago, it was a nice day, and it's a cute little town. They have outdoor furniture, couches and tables, umbrellas where just anybody can go and sit. And the boys and I were hanging out there. And an elderly couple came up to sit down. So immediately we got up and offered them our seats. And we started talking to them. And the woman was from Germany. And she started talking, you know, where are your kids in school? I said, no, I homeschool them. And we started talking about homeschooling and why I homeschool, talking about the truth and real history. And she said, do you know, that is so important because I was born in Nazi Germany. And I was born in the barn at our house. And the doctor told my mother, because my legs couldn't be straightened out at birth, the doctor told my mother, you take this baby into the hayloft and you raise her there. And don't you tell anybody about her because I could be shot for not killing her right now. And she said that doctor was under orders to murder any baby born with defects. She said, my mom kept me up in that barn for over a year for the first 2 years of my life, actually. She said, and she worked on straightening my legs and working with me every single day. This woman lived a healthy, normal, productive life. But here now we're talking about babies, you know, and I don't care. It says fetal defects. Well, we don't really know that, do we? We don't always know that. And where do you draw the line? It's a very, very slippery slope. We know that they're offering elective abortions for Down syndrome babies. In fact, I think it was Iceland that bragged that they don't have any Down syndrome people over there. Well, yeah, because you murdered them. That's nothing to brag about. We have the minority assistant whip Democrat out here from Salt Lake City, Angela Romero, quickly condemned this proposal. Of course she did. Here's her justification. This is a federal issue, and the state should leave it alone. Bills like this that have been tried in other states are always struck down. It's a waste of time. It'll never stand up in court. A federal court in 2016 permanently blocked a North Dakota law banning abortions as soon as a heartbeat is detected in the fetus as early as 6 weeks. A federal court also blocked an Arkansas law restricting abortions to 12 weeks. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear either case, allowing both to stand. Look, folks, this is not a federal issue. This is the problem when even our elected representatives at the state and federal level don't understand the concept of federalism. We have this de facto adherence to whatever the Supreme Court says. This is not a representative form of government. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover on that issue. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Jeff?
No, it's just this kind of striking that this representative out there says it's a federal issue, and it's not. She clearly does not understand that the state created the federal government. She's probably under the impression that the federal government's created the states, but
yeah, I think Idaho's also moving to. They're talking about calling that murder. So
right.
We
there was
have
an article we shared about that. They're looking at making abortion murder. Period. And Oklahoma has been talking about that since Dan Fisher.
So, you know, the danger of taking this to the federal judiciary is we're going to get a Roe v. Wade on steroids. Or now, because of, and this is what we hear all the time in law school when we get to these landmark Supreme Court cases in constitutional law, aptly called con law, because that's what it is. It's a con job. Is a quote that you read in the syllabus of the decisions in your textbook. It says, due to the inconsistency of state opinions, this case is ripe for review, meaning we're just going to do a power grab and give you one national standard for what was intended to be issues to be decided within the sovereign borders of the sovereign and independent states. So what we're going to see is a Roe v. Wade on steroids, where maybe New York law will become the law of the land. God bless America, huh? Think God's going to bless us? Really? Everybody has been talking about drums and hats. I want to transition over into that story now, as we're all familiar with the captivation of national, pardon my French, headlines from the incident that happened over at the Lincoln Memorial. I'm not going to get into, I posted some articles on the Wasatch Report page. We all know the facts now. We all know that the media blatantly distorted, lied to us. My question for you is, if you're still watching the mainstream media, my question for you is why? If they're going to lie about something so egregious and so easily proven to be factually inaccurate, what is the stuff they're getting past you? Think about that. And think about, do you really want to just put on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, any of these, and get your news from there? Come to places like us where we're going to get into an analysis that you're not going to hear elsewhere. Speaking of which, you know what was completely missing from the conversation and the analysis on this story, Jeff, and it struck me right away, was the location of the event, this conflict, where we had the Black Hebrews, I think that's what they were called, the Native Americans, and then we had the Covington Catholic School kids, all came together on the shrine of patron Saint Lincoln. This whole debacle happened at the very feet of the man responsible for the problems we're having today. What Lincoln single-handedly did was usurp the Jeffersonian constitutional government with the sovereign and independent states, having the control over a limited government with powers that were few and defined. Their powers were numerous and indefinite. What Lincoln did by calling forth an army without congressional approval while they were in recess, evading the sovereign CSA, inverted our system into the Hamiltonian, what we have now is the Lincolnian America. So from going to these United States, we have the United States of America. This is why every single issue is a point of contention. People who are disagreeing now, every 4 years or every time we have a senatorial or House elections, compete to see whose side from the top side down governance system we have is going to rule the other side. Everybody is angry. And the media, as we know, is the lapdog or just another branch of the Democrat Party, lied to us. All of a sudden now, it's okay to talk about punching high school kids in the face. All of a sudden now, it's okay to advocate school shootings. Yes, they have done that. All of a sudden now, I'm confused because David Hogg and little skinhead Emma Gonzalez were speaking the gospel truth because they were high school kids. But now all of a sudden, because this story doesn't fit the narrative, a kid who was smiling respectfully, Jeff, I admired this kid's restraint. If somebody came up to me banging some drum, and what it looked like to me was I thought there was actual contact from there, I wouldn't have handled it so well. How about you?
Honestly, Suzanne, I really never followed this whole thing because it's just more the dog and pony show. So I'm not even sure what the whole argument was over. I mean, seriously, I ignored it. I'm sorry.
What really struck me here, and I got a lot of flack because I was discussing this on a page, was my angle. My first take again was the irony that it took place at the Lincoln Memorial. You know, the nationalization of a federal republic, again, is what is causing this contention. But I also understand that we are now in a situation where, and this is why, when they started talking about taking down the Confederate flag, the Virginia battle flag, after the shooting, I believe that was in 2015 or 2016 at Mother Emanuel Church, Dylan Roof, they had pictures of him with the Confederate flag. I believe they also had him with the Stars and Stripes, but let's just not discuss that. I know the incident was horrific. We know slavery was wrong, but now the Marxists, the cultural Marxists, the progressives saw an opportunity and they jumped on it. They capitalized on the blood shed by these church-going people and said, well, clearly now we're going to have to ban this flag. And I said, don't you dare. Don't fall for that rhetoric, that emotionalism. Don't let those people's bloodshed be the springboard from which you're going to start dismantling the truth of Southern heritage. But sure enough, nobody listened. Nikki Haley took it down from state buildings. Don't get me started on her.
Suzanne,
yeah.
What about the hammer and sickle? It killed millions. Why is that acceptable for the left? What about these Che T-shirts? Che was a murderer. He killed homosexuals in Cuba. He was a despicable man. Yet they wear those shirts and everyone just applauds them for their bravery.
Well, and look at
if symbols are bad, why any of them?
Well, and look at the toxic masculinity thing with, Gillette pointing the finger at American males. You know what? Why don't you run this ad campaign over, I don't know, in countries where toxic males are throwing homosexuals off buildings or beating women, executing women for being raped, subjugating women, raping little boys? I don't know. See, to me, that's toxic masculinity. That's not even masculinity because those aren't men. Those are savages. But let me get back to this whole thing with the flag and them wanting to take this down. And I was saying, absolutely not, absolutely not. In fact, one of our good friends that has been on the show, I'll keep him out of the debate for now. We had a really lively debate over this. We're, saying, well, I know people that were denied treatment in hospitals because they were Black or they saw this flag and they were victims and it really hurts them. I don't care. I don't care. And they were Christians, by the way. Then Christians understand forgiveness. They understand redemption. Don't take Christian victims and use them as an excuse to obfuscate history. And this is very important history. So as we saw now, they weren't content with the flags. Now we're tearing down monuments. We're wanting to move the bodies of dead generals. Where has this gone now? I said this is a slippery slope. Where will this end? Now, apparently, it's not even safe to wear a hat that represents a president with whom you disagree. So let's talk about that angle, the PERSEC angle here. PERSEC, as we know, means personal security. OPSEC, same thing, operational security. I used to have, back when I was just doing that whole left-right paradigm thing, Jeff, I had my anti-Obama stickers on my truck. I had, lots of gun references on my truck. And when my son got his driver's permit, he started driving, and we were actually in the Walmart parking lot at Park City. And a gentleman actually approached the driver's side tapped on the window, touching our car, tapping on the window and instructing my son, a 15-year-old kid, to roll down his window. He knew better. And I stepped on the running board and I leaned over the windshield. And I said, "How can I help you, sir?" And he said, that sticker, is that about Obama? And I just said, "You have a nice day." But the point of the matter is, you don't know. Antifa wasn't around then. What would have happened if it had been some members of Antifa that had seen this? And in this discussion, I had said, I removed the stickers from my vehicle. Once my son was driving, who was not armed, I'm armed, but do I really want to get into an engagement that might end up in the use of lethal force over a freaking bumper sticker? Jeff, during the presidential election cycle, did you ever see a Hillary Clinton sticker on a car or a Hillary Clinton hat or t-shirt, or you just pick it, that gave you pause to say, gee, maybe I should consider the benefits of a Hillary Clinton presidency?
No.
These don't convince people. You're showing what you believe. Good for you. You have a right to do that. I'm thinking as I'm saying this, remember the line in Jurassic Park? You know, we're so busy thinking that we can do this. Did anybody stop to think, maybe should we? So consider now you're sending your kid to Washington, D.C. or any public place. You can look around. I am seeing so many videos of teenage boys who are being accosted, and I'm sure girls too, but you're seeing kids, adults as well, being accosted because they are wearing a MAGA hat. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Now we've seen, again, tying back to banning of symbols, statues, and references, an article in Breitbart, I don't remember his name, but it was a Democrat rep that said, we need to ban or prohibit minors from wearing Make America Great Again hats until we can figure out what is going on. I'll tell you, you jackass, what's going on. It's cultural Marxism, and you people are to blame for it. So again, we have gone from banning a flag, statues, to trying to suppress the expression of ideas, your support for a particular president. I wouldn't wear one. I don't believe in having a king. Our problems aren't going to be solved by who's the president. In fact, Donald Trump's proving to be a speed bump, and not a very big one at that. That being said, consider, do you think it's worth the risk of having this on your car? Jeff, what were you talking about also with what's going to happen to your vehicle if you have this on there? I had gum put on my car when I was living in California. I had some of these. I'm lucky my tires weren't flattened.
Exactly. That's why when we were talking before the show, I said, here's the deal. Is it worth having the windows broken out of your vehicle or your tires slashed over a stupid bumper sticker? Yeah, I mean, in prepping, there's this idea called the gray man. It's the one that just blends in with the background. Mm-hmm. And that's the guy you want to be in public. You don't want to wear that MAGA hat and make yourself a target. I mean, the whole point is not to get into the altercation where you might have to use lethal force. And, this whole idea that there's something wrong with the hat is a problem, but we are facing an ideology of violence with the Marxists. And so is it being a coward? No, it's just using a little common sense and not putting yourself in a situation where you're put into a corner where you have to respond in a way that's going to cause you a lot of problems. You're going to be in court a lot if you use lethal force.
Well, and the thing is, too, what this one gentleman said to me was, well, you've taught your kids to be cowards by taking that off. You need to think of the message that you're teaching them. And I said, the message I'm teaching them is your survival comes first. You're not going to convince. It's a cost-benefit analysis, really, if you think about it. What is the likelihood that with my truck with an Obama sticker on it, that is very unflattering is going to convince anybody to see around my way of thinking? Pretty much zero. Some people might give me a thumbs up. Okay, yay, good for me. But is it really worth having somebody maybe, and this happened actually to our good friend Paul Jensen on Inside the News on K-Talk. I was with him on Tuesday. I co-host with him on Tuesdays as well. And the lug nuts on his wheel were loosened and it came off. His tire came off when he was driving. So you have to think about this. Is this really worth your life? Or are there other ways you can convince people than getting a hat or a t-shirt or a sign where you're essentially giving everybody in the world the middle finger? I agree. It's very important to be vocal and supporting of our ideas. But at what point, what's an effective way to do it? And again, I don't think it is worth the risk to do something like that. And that's kind of all I have to say on that issue. Do you want to chime in any more before we skip to gosh, where's the time going?
I know we have 20 minutes left. We haven't even gotten to Senate Bill 66 or Oregon or any of these things. We have so much to talk about. We only have 20 minutes left. Good thing we're doing the show tomorrow.
Exactly. We're going to get into more of the cultural Marxism stuff tomorrow. There's a really good article on Mises about cultural Marxism and how that is here to stay. And that's really going to shape the parameters, really, because cultural Marxism and all these people that are triggered by everything and they're perfectly comfortable assaulting you. And if you're wearing, again, a hat or something that they disapprove of. But what is it really like, assuming now we keep going down this path? Again, states, system of federalism, when these are matters not prohibited to them, not reserved to the general government, remain with the states. That's the 10th Amendment, the most important amendment of the Constitution. This is in Oregon, and I bring this up because what happens in these states usually goes to the rest of this continental landmass. It permeates our culture like rust does. I remember when California's internet tax was just so outrageous. Guess what? It's everywhere now. So here is Oregon, an article from PJ Media, could become the first state to require in-home surveillance of newborn babies. Let me repeat that. State to require in-home surveillance of newborn babies. I submit to you, they already have that if they want. Just tap into our Alexis or whatever those things are called, or Echo, or all these other dish hopper, voice activated, our little tracking devices that we can't seem to put down when we're out in public or at the dinner table or what have you. They can already watch here. Oregon.
And per Greg, our cell phones and our computers, they're always on, they're always recording, they're always watching. The light may be off on that computer screen saying it's not, the camera's dead, but it isn't. Yeah. They're getting everything. And Oregon, we'll have to have Greg talk about that again. Our tech.
Yeah, because there's another article too that I found. That's why I asked if he was coming on today, because it's about China has some software that will actually let you know if you're near somebody that has a debt or credit issue. This goes back to the social credits, but that's going to be a good show because we're going to talk about that. But let me get to this one. If Oregon Governor Kate Brown has her way, Oregon's going to become the first state to require universal home visits for newborn children in the care of foster homes. I'm just kidding. It's in the care of their own parents. Their own parents. Senate Bill 526, introduced this month in Oregon Legislative Assembly as part of her budget, orders the Oregon Health Authority to study home visiting by licensed healthcare providers. Lawmakers went so far as to declare that this is an emergency measure, aren't they all? One that requires a resolution by the end of the year, and it reads, the Oregon Health Authority shall study home visiting by licensed healthcare providers in the state. The authority shall submit findings and recommendations for legislations to an interim committee of the Legislative Assembly. The 18 sponsors of the bill claim that its passage is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety. Therefore, an emergency is declared to exist. This is how they have been expanding government all the way back at the federal level to the Louisiana Purchase. Thomas Jefferson said that it was of dubious constitutionality. James Madison convinced him to do so, not because he was convinced it was constitutional, but because he said we will lose our window of opportunity if we don't act expeditiously. Just
guess what they're going to be looking for in your house?
Guns. Oh, taxidermists. You know, somebody can walk into my house. I have a newborn baby here. This is Oregon. What if they come in? What if you're a hunter? They see taxidermies, your trophies on the wall, something like that. They don't like it because we know these people are, the government workers are almost always going to be leaning hardcore left. So what's going to happen if they see something they don't like that is absolutely independent of the care and the health and the welfare of this baby? So what's the big emergency? Apparently, the state of Oregon, this is just what we were discussing, is concerned that some parents are raising their children without the watchful eye of Big Brother monitoring their every move, a big no-no in the view of the progressive left. Patrick Allen is the director of the Oregon Health Authority. He told the newspaper here that the Beaver Valley Times that he's enthusiastic about the idea of universal inspections for newborns. This isn't something for people in trouble. This is stuff all kids need. Stuff my kids needed. Really? You can't bring your own baby home without adult supervision by the government? Maybe you shouldn't bring children into this world. When the program is complete, every new parent, and that includes adoptions, would receive a series of 2 or 3 visits by someone like a nurse or other healthcare practitioner. I wonder if the sheriff will show up with them in case you decide to close the door in their face. The visits could include basic health screenings for babies, hooking parents up with primary care physicians. Like, we can't do that on our own. You got 9 friggin' months to work that out. Linking them to other services and coordinating the myriad childhood immunizations that babies need. In other words, giving the cattle their shots. The program has been piloted in Lincoln County. How convenient, Lincoln County, but has not been tried statewide. Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, who sits on the Powerful Ways and Means Committee that will hammer out the language, has said the universal home visits are a priority for her.
What's going to happen to the families that say no?
Yeah, they're not mentioning that here. What if you say, I mean, it's California. You have to submit to a blood test. I remember, again, my little 35-week-old preemie was born, and when they put that little lance in his heel to get a blood test, which is mandatory. Now, I'm in the hospital. I had an emergency delivery, so there's no way I'm getting out of there without that done. This kid, literally 4 pounds, looked across the room for me. Why are they hurting me? Where's my mom? What do you think this kid's thinking when they're yanking it out of the womb piece by piece? A kid that knows enough to grab a bottle and put it to his mouth. Let me go back to this article. I'm getting a little upset here. So, Oregon, the children in the foster care system are abused at twice the rate of national rate. So now we're talking about foster children and their rate of abuse, and using again an issue with in search of a problem to impose state intervention in a very private time in your life. When you have a baby and you first bring it home, that's a really it's a private time. You're recovering. And now the state wants to come in and supervise you and make sure these babies get their shots. You know, in California, there used to be a philosophical waiver for immunizations. That went away because a politician who happened to be a pediatrician saw that philosophical went away. Conflict of interest much? So this is what we're looking at in Oregon. Any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Oh, this is again. Let me go. Hold on a second. I'm trying to find this. Okay. Luke in our live chat, and welcome everyone that's in the live chat. We have a few people, and actually it's great. People are actually talking with me here, so we're getting a little feedback in here, and it like any of those risks hadn't existed since practically the beginning of time. Why do something about it now? Well, the actual and I know Luke understands. It's about control, and they have to control us. And what did Hillary say? It takes a community. And well, here we go. We're going to get community, and we're going to get it hard.
You know what else she said? We have got to get to these kids early. Well, here we have from cradle to grave. Literally from cradle, newborn home inspections. Absolutely insane. Here's something else. Also out of Oregon. This is an article in Breitbart about mandatory, you're going to love this one, mandatory mental health exam for students are up for consideration. A bill that would require a mental health exam for every student in grades 6 through 12 each academic year is up for consideration in the Oregon State Legislature. This is Legislative Concept 2890, if you want to look it up, would require home districts, school districts, and public charter schools to conduct mental health wellness checks annually on each student. According to Mental Health America, Oregon is ranked as the state with the highest prevalence of mental illness, probably accounts for their policies. Additionally, the state earned a ranking of 16 out of 51 on the Mental Health America's Access to Care map. Oregon has a lack of child psychiatrists, meaning, guess what? We're going to drug them.
More psychotropic drugs.
Yeah.
Give me candy.
And school counselors, a situation that leaves families waiting for months to get help. The bill does not specify who would conduct the mental health screenings, who would pay for the exams, and what the cost would be. The report continues, the bill does not specify when the evaluations would need to be completed or how the collected information would be used. Oh, I know. Other than the information would be evaluated by a qualified counselor or mental health professional. A parent or adult student would be able to excuse a student, or parent of an adult student would be able to excuse a student from undergoing a wellness check by completing a form and submitting it to the school. Gee, you think that'll cause any red flags if you say, no, I don't want you evaluating my kid? Well, what do you have to hide? So now the kid's getting their little evaluation. Oh, counselor starts talking, what can be taken out of context? What can be lied about? What can happen? What if, again, I keep going to the hunting thing. Oh yeah, I went out shooting with my dad, or, any of this stuff, because again, who is going to decide who is mentally unwell or not? I've talked about this before. When we had a shooting, somebody on Twitter, on our Governor Gary Herbert's Twitter feed, said that we need to address the issue of gun control because we need to save lives. And I responded, I'm so glad you want to save lives. Let's actually save more lives and discuss the abortion issue. Response, stay on the subject. Me. Well, I'm sorry, you said stay on the subject. We're talking about saving lives, so let's save the unborn lives while we're at it. Response, you're insane. So by virtue of my vocalizing my expression of the desire to save the lives of the unborn, I have been categorized as insane. Well, if I'm insane, guess what I'm not allowed to have? I'm not allowed to own or possess a firearm. Oppositional defiance disorder, a new disease that they've come up with now, is people that oppose authority. That is one of those that could be considered, can also be considered, maybe you shouldn't have a gun. So these people, remember, school records now, thanks to nationalization of the education system, accessible by the federal government. medical records accessible by the federal government. The federal government is going to determine who and who cannot have a firearm, also in direct contravention to the Constitution as ratified. Do you see where we're going with this? We're talking about more gun regulations. We're interfering with the mental exams of children. If a parent is concerned with the mental health of their child, it is incumbent upon the parent to seek assistance. It is certainly not within the providence of government at taxpayer expense to evaluate these children. Also, they're talking about evaluating all of them. To me, this is nothing more than kind of like a search without probable cause. We're going to search the thinking and the mind of your kid. What do you think the ramifications are going to be, Jeff, if they disagree with your family values and the outcomes they come up with, the results of these examinations? Where do you think this is going to go?
Well, they have to remove the child from the home. They got to take control because they have to make sure that this child becomes the good little status drone that they desire. If you're training your child to be a critical thinker, that is unacceptable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And critical thinking is what we try to encourage people to do here. Our listener, Mike, is sending me a message also in Facebook chat, going back to when we were talking about the MAGA hats. A Jew in the 1930s would not display their star. They did it to survive, not to be a coward. It's exactly right. At this point, is it more important to state your political beliefs than it is to, I don't know, not be the victim of an assault? In Germany, obviously, it was much worse. So this is, I think we're heading into some very troubling times. I'm not encouraged in the direction that we're going. We can pontificate on states' rights and federalism all we want, and I still will be keeping that message out. But I'm going to be discussing a little bit more as, you know, what is our reality today? We're looking at, I don't know if Trump's going to be elected or not. I hope he is, so we get a little bit more of a speed bump. But we're looking at Kamala Harris, Julian Castro, Beto O'Rourke, Bernie Sanders, who seems to me the sanest one of that crowd. We are in for some really, really scary times. Even in this Trump administration, Dianne Feinstein, once again, in Senate Judiciary Committee, is putting forth an assault weapons ban. They're talking about raising the age level for minors. You have to be 21 to buy one of the guns with the scary features. It's going to get worse. This is what's happening under a proposed, under a Trump administration. He's already indicated, we already have the bump stock ban. We have the red flag laws. He said he's first we'll get the guns, we'll worry about due process later. He also said he would entertain the notion of an assault weapons ban. Meanwhile, we're also going to build a wall. So not only are we going to be disarmed, but we are going to be on the same side of the wall as these lunatics. This is what happens when we have a national government run amok, combined with an uneducated populace, with a media who, by the way, took strong exception for Trump speaking the truth about them. They are the enemy of the people. And if you're not convinced by what we've just seen this week, I don't know what it's going to take. I'm not feeling very optimistic, Jeff. I don't like to come on the air and just grumble and complain. I like to offer solutions. So I think the best I can come up with at this point is, how do we survive in a society that is gravitating unwaveringly towards socialism, Marxism? We see the result of this in other places around the world. Yet I don't see this path changing. We're going to talk about that more tomorrow. Tomorrow when we come back up, we're going to talk about an article on the Mises Institute about cultural Marxism. I'm going to get into some more gun control, particularly with regards to the assault rifle ban, as well as some of the constitutional history, our founding fathers' history. I have an article by the 10th Amendment Center in that regard. So we'll get into that. We're about out of time today. I want to thank you for listening. Jeff, thank you for doing the show today. We're going to be recording an episode of Case in Point this week as well, and maybe knock out a couple more of our fundamentals of federalism. This has been the Wasatch Report. Suzanne Sherman, Jeff Johnson, we thank you very much here on the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.